With a bandage over his ear after surviving an assassination attempt, Donald Trump made a triumphant entrance into the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. He was officially nominated as the presidential candidate of the Republican Party and named his pick for vice president in Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. The Hill White House reporter Brett Samuels is at the RNC and joins us to discuss. Brett, after all the turmoil, the two impeachments, January 6th, civil penalties, criminal prosecutions, for Trump to reclaim the Republican mantle in front of a standing ovation, that had to be quite the scene. Take us inside. What was it like?
Yeah, you could tell, just kind of watching the former president when he was put up on the video board as he walked into the convention hall. Clearly seemed pretty emotional. Obviously the reception was very rapturous. I was on the convention floor about 2 hours before former President Trump made his appearance. And there were sort of these rumblings that he would be entering the convention hall through this one part of the convention floor. And so people started sort of gathering around the rope line, lining up to try and catch a glimpse, and standing there for 2 hours basically to just see him walk by. So, certainly folks here were thrilled to see him. This was his first public appearance since that assassination attempt. And last night really just made clear that this party is fully behind Donald Trump, despite everything you mentioned that's happened in the past.
Now, J.D. Vance, a former Trump critic who once compared Trump to Hitler, is the pick for vice president. He's the favorite of the MAGA wing of the party, but holds hard right views on abortion and foreign policy. Strategically speaking, what does Vance bring to the table for the Trump campaign?
Yeah, I think it's the main appeal for J.D. Vance on paper is that he appeals to these sort of Rust Belt voters, these white working class voters, who could really be important in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where if Donald Trump can win one or two of those states, that really kind of closes off Joe Biden's path to victory. So that appeal to working class voters, which make up a good part of Trump's base, is sort of the main play here politically, I think. And then looking forward, there's this idea that J.D. Vance really echoes Trump on a lot of his views, his policy views. And so it's kind of setting up the party to just kind of be on this trajectory for years to come. And setting Vance up as sort of the heir apparent to take up Trump's mantle should they win in November.
Now, Trump has been trying to position himself as something of a moderate on abortion, even though he did appoint the key Supreme Court justices that overturned Roe v. Wade. Trump pushed for a softening of the abortion issue in the GOP platform. Now with the pick of Vance, who opposes abortion in all cases, even rape and incest, how are you seeing the abortion issue play out at the convention?
Yeah, Democrats wasted practically no time once J.D. Vance was named as Trump's running mate in going on offense, particularly on the abortion issue. As you mentioned, they see Vance's views on this as extremely radical, out of the mainstream. And this is something, Democrats have already been keen on making abortion a central focus for this whole election. As you mentioned, tying Trump to those three Supreme Court justices who he appointed, who voted to overturn Roe, blaming the statewide abortion bans that we're seeing on Trump. And now we're just going to see kind of a continuation of that, this argument that Vance is an extremist on abortion, that voters should be worried about what a Trump-Vance administration might do to roll back reproductive rights. So certainly this is something I think we'll see Democrats really just kind of continue to hammer for the weeks and months to come. And now J.D. Vance just kind of gives them more fodder for that.
Some in the Republican Party had hoped that after Trump, the GOP would return to its roots of fiscal conservatism, free trade, and a hawkish foreign policy. Does the pick of Vance as VP secure a more protectionist, isolationist future for the party? And at this point, is there any opposition to that?
I think that's kind of one of the big takeaways from his choice of J.D. Vance is that this party is fully in the mold of Donald Trump, both now and looking forward to the future. J.D. Vance, who himself was a Trump critic, initially in 2016, he has fully evolved to be a full America First, full MAGA type Republican who echoes Trump's views on trade, protectionist trade policies. He echoes his views on approaching China, sort of, stepping back from supporting Ukraine and its war against Russia. And those are things that a candidate like Nikki Haley, for example, she was very, very pro supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia, opposed some of these, as you said, more populist views. So this really just kind of cements that this party is fully in Trump's grasp. It's going to be for years to come. J.D. Vance is fully somebody in Trump's image. And we will see Nikki Haley speak here on Tuesday, but her sort of wing of the party is increasingly diminishing. It's fair to say.
A new Snap poll by YouGov shows only 29% of U.S. adults have a positive view of J.D. Vance, but the poll also shows 43% are undecided. What's the GOP strategy to convince voters that Vance is ready to be president on day one?
It's a good question because I think one of the big risks of choosing someone like J.D. Vance is he's only been in the Senate for under 2 years, and this is his first sort of government office that he's holding. So the question is, what do Republicans do to kind of, convince voters that he is ready to take office on day one? Should something happen to Trump, or should Vance sort of pursue the Republican nomination in 2028. Now, I think we'll see J.D. Vance out there a lot. He's already done a lot of TV. He'll continue to do that. The campaign, I think, will waste no time sending him to swing states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where they think his message resonates. So as you said, that poll shows that there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of people who just don't really know much about J.D. Vance. So I think we'll see him be a very public-facing figure in the days and weeks to come already.
New polling shows Trump leading in all 7 swing states. Republicans are projecting a lot of confidence that they are headed for victory in November. Is that the feeling you're getting there on the ground?
100%. Yeah. Republicans are, kind of brimming with confidence, I think, here at the convention. They feel like the wind is at their backs. Obviously there was this sort of tragic, horrific shooting at the Trump rally on Saturday. And on the one hand, there is, I think, this sort of somber sense. And on the other hand, this is sort of a celebration that they feel like their candidate, President Trump, he survived that shooting. He stood up, he pumped his fist, and everyone's kind of rallying behind him. And they feel like, between the judge in Florida dismissing the documents case against Trump, between the polls showing Trump ahead, Biden, sort of the infighting among Democrats, Republicans just feel like everything's going their way right now. And they're feeling really confident, not just about winning back the White House, but also taking control of both chambers of Congress in November.
And what else are you watching for in day 2 of the RNC?
I think, the most notable speaker on the schedule, I think it's fair to say, is Nikki Haley, who was Trump's sort of most formidable rival in the primary. There'll be a lot of eyes on not just what Haley says, but how she's received. For example, Mitch McConnell was sort of the only person who took the stage on Monday who was booed by the crowd. The question is, does the crowd here on Tuesday sort of receive Haley warmly, receive her message of unity and her olive branch, or do they boo her because she was Trump's, sort of fiercest rival in the primary and there was no love lost between the two of them? So that's certainly one thing I'll be watching. Ron DeSantis, another former primary rival, is set to speak here on Tuesday. So I think those 2 speeches will probably be the most closely watched, not just for what they say, but how the audience reacts.
All right. That's all I got. Brett Samuels, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
President Biden is trying to build momentum for his campaign and fend off calls for a new nominee from within his own party. This as polls continue to show Biden trailing former President Trump nationally and in key swing states. The Hill White House correspondent Alex Gangitano joins us to discuss. Alex, Biden sat down with NBC's Lester Holt for an interview that was at times combative. What do you think were the biggest takeaways?
That's right. The president was at times combative with Lester Holt, pushing back on questioning over if he would consider debating Trump again before their next debate, which is scheduled for September. And he appeared frustrating about lines of questioning over Democrats calling for him to step down. Other takeaways that I had was that the president said that when he called Trump on Saturday after his assassination attempt, they had a cordial conversation, which was largely around the president's concerns for his political rival. And he told Holt that he's not surprised by Trump's vice president pick, saying that the president is going to surround himself by people who completely agree with him.
Now, in the wake of the assassination attempt on the former president, Biden was asked about his comments that Democrats needed to put a bullseye on Trump in the presidential campaign. Biden said it was a mistake, but it seems that Biden is faced with a difficult task of making a forceful case for the danger that he says former President Trump presents, and using language that could be perceived as inciting violence.
Yeah, this will definitely be a balancing act over the next few months of trying to move forward with his calls to tone down the rhetoric, cool it down, but also try to convince Americans, as you mentioned, that the president thinks that the former president is a threat to democracy, needs to be stopped. So I'll be curious to see if he tones down his rhetoric. Like in the past, he's called Trump a loser during rallies. He's also, really honed in the fact that the former president is a convicted felon. Will we see that kind of rhetoric again, or will the president tone it as on that? But he still has to come out strong on the campaign trail, especially in the wake of Democrats, being concerned about his age and stamina. But he'll have to also be careful to not incite this level of violence that we saw. When talking about this term bullseye with Lester Holt, this was something that the president said on a call with donors just last week, that there's to be a bullseye on Trump. He said that this may have been a mistake, but he did push back on a question from Lester Holt about if he has done some soul searching about his own rhetoric and if he's been inciting violence. The president said that he has not engaged in rhetoric that could incite somebody. So we'll see if he changes his tone or if he thinks that he's been safe on that.
Biden has taken a page out of the Trump playbook, blaming the media for what he says is disproportionate focus on him since the debate. That plays well in the Republican Party that's long been distrustful of the media. Did Democrats think that's a winning strategy with their voters?
Yeah, the president has been really leaning into his attacks on the media. Just last night with Lester Holt, he accused him of not focusing on issues that matter, like policy issues, and questioning him on the wrong things. It's unclear at this point if this will be a winning strategy. Like you said, taking on the press has been something that Republicans, especially spearheaded by former President Trump, has become, known for. Biden, though, is definitely on the defense right now, whether it's because of his debate performance and, Democrats calling for him to step aside, or in the wake of the assassination attempt on Trump. He's trying to, figure out how to navigate the political waters right now. So I think the president is he's ready to be on the defense. He's ready to push back on anyone questioning his stamina, his ability to win the 2024 race. And that's what we're just seeing right now. But we'll have to see if he continues these attacks on the press or if he kind of cools down as things maybe settle a bit here.
The Democratic National Committee is moving to officially lock up President Biden's nomination as the party's candidate in 2024. As soon as the end of the month, the DNC could have a virtual roll call vote that secures Biden's spot at the top of the ticket. The move is facing opposition from some in the party who hope for a new nominee. What's going to happen here?
That's right. So we learned just today that members are actually circulating a letter to the Democratic National Committee expressing concerns about them moving forward with this roll call vote. So the vote was first scheduled earlier this year because Democrats were basically notified that the president might not be on the ballot in Ohio because of a deadline, which was August 7th, to certify his nomination ahead of the August 19th convention. But since then, Ohio's actually moved their deadline. So these members that are circulating this letter are saying, this is a moot point. I don't think it's necessary to go forward with this early roll call vote, especially at a time that there are divisions within the party about the president's candidacy. People have questions. It's really not the time. It's a terrible idea, they say in this letter, at this time to move forward with this early vote. Let it get to the convention. And the president himself, as these members cited in the letter, has said, if somebody wants to challenge me in the convention, go for it. But, this would make that a really difficult option. But just today, also, the Biden campaign, while doing their counter programming in Milwaukee, doubled down on the decision to hold this roll call vote early, said that they don't trust that Ohio wouldn't make another change. But meanwhile, Democrats are arguing that it undermines the unity of the party. So it's a tough one right now. We'll see if they actually follow through with this roll call vote or if they just let it play out in the convention.
New numbers from U.S. Customs and Border Protection show border arrests have plunged 29% in June, the lowest monthly total in Biden's presidency. With so much emphasis on border security this election, can the Biden campaign drive a message that his executive action is working?
Yeah, I think the news of these border numbers is really big for Biden, considering that the southern border is such an issue that Republicans have hammered him on for years. The president is facing obviously other major issues right now ahead of November, including, uniting Democrats within his own party. So anything that could tamper another issue, I think, is good news for him. But I think Republicans will still find a way to use this on the campaign trail. I think they'll try to argue that Biden did, too little, too late. Where was he, when border numbers were surging? Meanwhile, I think the president and Democrats can argue on the campaign trail that he showed leadership here. He stepped up and did something through an executive order, while Republicans, played politics on immigration and on the border. So I do think Democrats will try to have the upper hand here, but I think it's such a big issue. It's something that so many regular Americans care about that Republicans aren't just going to let this one go, and they're going to find a way to talk about this on the trail still.
The Secret Service is facing heavy criticism following the assassination attempt on former President Trump, which is seen as one of the biggest security failures in recent history. How are lawmakers reacting, and what type of investigations could we see moving forward?
Yeah, so the agency is really under fresh scrutiny over what happened this weekend with the security rally and around the rally that led to an assassination attempt. Trump himself, meanwhile, has said that the Secret Service detail did a fantastic job protecting him. And the president has also said that he has directed investigations. He's directed an independent investigation to look into this. And meanwhile, the Secret Service is looking into what happened as well. We're also going to see Senate Democrats move forward with investigations, House Republicans. There'll be a lot of retracing what happened. Meanwhile, lawmakers so far are coming out and saying, that this incident raised serious concerns. Ruben Gallo, of a House member from Arizona who's running for the Senate, said that, he's really concerned about the security measures that were taken or not to protect Trump. And we also have heard from Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who wrote on social media that any third grader would know that it's malpractice not to have personnel on the rooftop where a shooter was positioned. So these are some pretty harsh words, and I think the Secret Service is going to continue to face a lot of backlash here.
Now, Trump was handed a major victory this week with a judge tossing his classified documents case out. But now this will allow Jack Smith to immediately appeal to the 11th Circuit Court. What are the chances of a reversal in this case moving forward? And is it possible the case could actually move to a different judge now?
Like you mentioned, the judge tossing the case is a big win for Trump. It's the first time a judge has dismissed one of his criminal indictments in its entirety. But in terms of a reversal, like you said, Special Counsel Jack Smith yesterday said he plans to appeal the decision, saying that the dismissal of the case deviates from the uniform conclusion that Attorney General is authorized to appoint a special counsel. That appeal would be first headed to a 3-panel judge on the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and it could ultimately reach the Supreme Court. Other ways that this could work out is that Trump could be charged again by an authorized prosecutor. Congress could pass legislation providing authority for a future special counsel, or we could see the Department of Justice bring this case against Trump through a U.S. Attorney General, or U.S. Attorney, excuse me. So there's some other avenues here, but it definitely starts with Jack Smith appealing what happened yesterday.
All right, Alex Gangitano, thanks so much.
Thank you.
RFK Jr. has issued an apology to former President Trump after a video call between the two was posted online. In the leaked video recording, Trump could be heard talking with the independent presidential candidate, saying he agrees with some of his stances on vaccines. The former president also seemed to suggest the two could work together in the future, although it's unclear what exactly Trump meant. During the phone call between the two presidential candidates, Trump brought up the assassination attempt on his life, mentioning the wound on his ear felt like the world's largest mosquito bite. In a social media post on X, RFK Jr. wrote he was mortified and apologized to Trump. He blamed a videographer for the mistake and said the footage should never have been posted. California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a new bill into law banning forced outing policies in schools. The law prevents school staff from notifying parents if their child decides to change their gender identity without permission from the student. Gender identity in schools has become an increasingly tense political issue nationwide. So far, 8 states have passed laws requiring school officials to tell parents if their child decides to change their gender identity or pronouns. The California bill was backed by State Attorney General Rob Bonta and top state public school officials. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.